We are starting a new countdown this week, 10 weeks away from SummerSlam. We are counting down what I have ranked as the 10 best matches in SummerSlam history. And this week we are kicking things off with number 10 in the countdown. They say you never forget your first. I kind of wish, I could forget mine. But in this case, I'm talking about the first ever tables, ladders, and chairs match between Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys for the tag team titles at SummerSlam 2000. Maybe the best overall year for WWE pay-per-view shows. Royal Rumble was great. Backlash was a fine show. Judgment Day, Fully Loaded, SummerSlam. A lot of great shows that year. I've always been partial myself to TLC 2. I think TLC 2 is the best TLC match of this series of matches that these guys had. But having gone back to watch this match again, I forgot how great this one was. And I bumped another match I had on my original list off the list to make room for this one. And when I get to all the honorable mentions in a few weeks, it'll be on there. I won't say what it is. But all three of these teams, they were the engine behind the tag team revival of sorts that WWE experienced in the late 90s, early 2000s, because it was kind of dead there for a while. And especially in 98, even at the start of the Attitude Era, I don't remember that being a great period for tag teams in the company. But the end of 99 into 2000, that's where things really began to pick up. And you could draw a straight line. I mean, there's a direct correlation between these three teams kind of coming into their own and the resurgence of tag team wrestling in WWE. When you think of the golden era, what do you think of? Think of the Hart Foundation, Demolition, the British Bulldogs, the Rockers. I think of the Brainbusters, even though they had a relatively short run in WWE. These three teams define their own era. And the genesis of all of this dates back to the No Mercy pay-per-view in October of 99 and the first ever tag team ladder match in WWE between the Hardys and Edge and Christian. This was a tag team ladder match for the managerial services of one Terry Runnels and, oh by the way, as an aside, $100,000 in cash that was hanging in a sack above the ring. Was it a sack or was it a briefcase? I don't remember now. I kind of remember Jeff Hardy grabbing his sack from the top of the ladder, grabbing the money from the top of the ladder, but I remember it being in a sack and not in a briefcase, but I could be wrong. But I remember him taking this huge fall off the ladder after the Hardys won that match. And that was a match unlike anything we had really ever seen up to that point in WWE. I mean, that match really put those two teams on the map. Now, around that same time, the Dudley Boyz made the jump from ECW to WWE. Later in the summer, they debuted on television. Bubba had this stutter. He had this really kind of thick, fake Southern accent going on. And so the Dudleys had just arrived on the scene. A few months later at the Royal Rumble at MSG, they wrestled the Hardys in the first ever tag team tables match in WWE. Great match. Very memorable finish. Jeff Hardy doing a swanton bomb off the top of the entranceway with that giant taxi cab in the background. Boy, do I miss the custom entrances that they used to invest in for their pay-per-views. Now it's just a giant screen. WrestleMania 2000, they had a triangle ladder match involving all three teams, which, if you really think about it, that match at WrestleMania was really the very first TLC match. It just didn't have that name. Did they have chairs in that match? I remember ladders and tables for sure. Maybe they didn't use chairs. If they didn't use chairs, then I guess it was just a TL match, not TLC. I don't remember them using chairs. But that match set the stage for what would come at SummerSlam a few months later. Mick Foley was the commissioner at the time. He made the announcement of tables and ladders and chairs. Oh my! That was the whole big promotion going into the match. Each one of these teams, or each one of the letters in TLC represented the weapon of choice for each team. So Edge and Christian, they used to give their opponents the concerto. So the chairs were sort of for them. The Hardys were very fond of jumping off ladders from high altitudes. So I guess Hardys and ladders went together. And the Dudleys were all about the tables. They popularized the use of the table in WWE. As far as the match itself, I would describe this as a 20-minute car crash in slow motion. All action from the opening bell, nonstop, hot crowd, into everything that was going on here. And why wouldn't they be? They had never seen a match like this before. You think the father and his son sitting in the crowd, the casual fan watching this, ever saw a match like this before? 6 guys trying to kill themselves? And there were so many memorable spots. The big spots in this match were very memorable. They all worked in these memorable spots. Bubba Ray gave Christian a Bubba Bomb off one of the ladders, which made my tailbone hurt just watching it. Jeff, he recreated the giant ladder spot from Wrestlemania 2000. Now at Wrestlemania, it was in the aisleway. He had Bubba laid out on a table. He set up this giant, I don't know how tall this ladder was, 15 feet ladder maybe. Giant ladder, climbs to the top of the ladder and hits a swanton bomb off the ladder. He hit Bubba with it, but, he grazed him on the way down. Well, here, unfortunately for him, they recreated the spot, but not exactly, because Bubba moved out of the way, and Jeff crashed and burned through the table. Then they had this unbelievable spot. The Dudleys had stacked tables on top of each other outside the ring, kind of where the aisleway was. So you had these 4 tables, right? 2 stacked on top of the other. The action continues. We forget about that for a little bit. A little bit later on, Bubba's in the ring. He's all alone. He finds himself all alone in the ring. He starts climbing the ladder. And as he's climbing the ladder, Edge and Christian come into the ring. They tip the ladder over, and Bubba takes this incredible bump out of the ring down through all 4 tables. 3 out of the 4. One didn't break. But 3 out of the 4 tables exploded upon impact. An incredible spot. I would shit my pants if that were me. I'd have to wear black tights or black trunks. So that was quite the sight to see. So now Edge and Christian, they start climbing. They've got the match won. Crowd is booing. Crowd does not want these guys to win. I think they were the champions going into the match. I don't remember for sure. Maybe they weren't. But they do not want these 2 to win. They've got the match well in hand when all of a sudden Lita runs down to the ring. She tips over the ladder. Edge crotches himself on the top rope. He and Christian fall out of the ring. Crowd's going crazy at this point. Lita's outside cheering on Matt, cheering on the Hardys, trying to get them. Jeff is still laid out, so Lita is cheering on Matt. Matt Hardy starts climbing the ladder. He's got his back turned to the crowd on the hard camera. Okay, so he's climbing the ladder. He's got his back turned to us. On the other side of the ladder, Devon Dudley is now up, and Devon grabs the ladder and begins to tip it backwards. He tips the ladder backwards, and he sends Matt Hardy falling backwards out of the ring through 2 tables that have been placed outside the ring. That takes brass balls to fall backwards like that. It's one thing to actually see it coming, or to, see guys that are hopefully there to catch you, or see where the table is and all that. This guy had his back turned, and he's got to just fall backwards and hope and pray that he lands in just the right spot. His head could have hit the barricade. He could have undershot the table. So many things can go wrong in a situation like that. It takes guts. It takes guts and trust to do a spot like that, and a little bit of stupidity to agree to do a spot like that. Now, when that happened, Lita went over to check on Matt. Edge is outside the ring. Edge sees Lita. He makes a beeline for Lita and spears her. He spears Lita outside the ring. Now, he would spear Lita many years later, and it killed his friendship with Matt Hardy because of it for a long time. But this was the first time. And when he speared her, the back of her head smacked. You heard the noise. You heard the smack of her skull against the ladder that had been, unfortunately for her, right there on the floor. The back of her head smacked that ladder. It made a sickening sound. Jim Ross was so appalled by this that in the heat of the moment he called Edge a son of a bitch. And he called a lot of people sons of bitches back then. But this was almost like an impulse in the heat of the moment. Not planned, not thought of. It just kind of came out. And he apologized for it. I have no idea how Lita didn't crack the back of her skull open and was bleeding all over the place. But she wasn't. But I'm sure it didn't feel very good. So, as exciting and crazy as this all was, this would probably be a good time to mention one thing in watching this match back again. One thing I hated about these spots that they were doing is that even though I'm watching this 20 years later, almost 20 years later, And I know they survived. They're all still breathing and among the living, and they have a pulse and all that. I feared for their lives. While I'm watching this, 20 years later almost, I fear for their lives watching this. I can imagine how I felt and other people felt watching this back then. I mean, younger me back then was probably like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. But I'm sure there were a lot of people watching, whether you were related to these people or not, who were concerned for their safety. And I can see why. These were insanely dangerous, stupid bumps for these guys to be taking. It's very scary to see them put their bodies on the line to this degree, just in the name of stealing the show. Which they did. Mission accomplished. But you ask the question, at what cost? So, Bubba is gone. Matt has been wiped out. Edge and Christian are out on the floor. That leaves Devon Dudley and Jeff Hardy, finally recovered after missing that earlier swanton bomb outside the ring. Finally, he is back up on his feet. So we got Devon, we got Jeff. They're both climbing opposite ends of the ladder. They both grab each of the tag team belts that are hanging from the ceiling. Edge and Christian come back into the ring. They reemerge. They pull the ladder out from underneath Devon and Jeff. And now Devon and Jeff are left hanging from the cable above the ring. 15 feet, you figure? 15, 20 feet in the air? They're hanging there. Jeff, they're swaying back and forth. Jeff is kicking at Devon, trying to knock him down. It should be noted that Devon Dudley is scared to death of heights. He is deathly afraid of heights and did not want to do this spot, but he took one for the team, and eventually Jeff's kicking at him, and Devon lets go. Talk about a trust fall. He lets go. He trusts that he'll be okay when he lands, and he crashes and burns down on the mat. I think for him, probably the bump was the easy part. It was just dangling in the air like that probably scared him half to death. I know that feeling because I'm afraid of heights too. So now it's just Jeff. Jeff's all by himself. People going nuts. All he has to do is unhook the belts. Edge and Christian down below, they pick up the ladder. They toss it in the air. They throw it up at Jeff. It hits Jeff. Jeff plunges down to the mat. And that allows Edge and Christian to set the ladder up, climb the ladder to the top, and to retrieve both tag team title belts. Insanity. Absolute insanity. And this wasn't even the best TLC match. Like I said, WrestleMania 17, I put that one above this one. But this was, I mean, we've had TLC pay-per-views every year in the years since then. Well, not every year, but like many years later, they turned it into a pay-per-view. So I can't even tell you how many total TLC matches there have been. Dozens of them by now in WWE. Some great ones, some not so great ones, but this was pure insanity. And I remember being very surprised to see them win, Edge and Christian, because they had already won the Triangle match at WrestleMania. So they had them win this match, and they went on to win TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17 the following year. Edge and Christian were the undisputed kings of the TLC match. But being the king of the TLC match has its drawbacks. Being the king of the TLC match does not come without a price. And years of these types of matches, I mean, it was only 2 or 3 years after this that Edge had spinal fusion surgery. So really not that long. He went in and had neck surgery. Why do you think he had neck surgery? You watch a match like this, Edge actually didn't even take any of the more insane bumps in this match. This was relatively safe for him. But it was not even 3 years after this, the guy was having spinal fusion surgery. And then years on top of that of singles matches with ladders and other TLC matches with ladders. The match he had with John Cena in 2006. Other ladder matches with Jeff Hardy in the years that followed. It all took a toll. I mean, Edge was on borrowed time anyway after that surgery, just like Austin was. And it took a toll on his neck, and it forced him into an early retirement. Christian had to retire due to repeated concussions. Matt and Jeff, they're still going. Although Jeff is hurt right now. He's about to undergo surgery. Bubba, he's terrorizing fans in Ring of Honor locker rooms. And Devon works as an agent now for WWE. So may they live long and prosper and be able to get around on their own when they are well into their 60s and not need to not need the assistance of a wheelchair or a motorized scooter.